The air in the proving hall was thick with the scent of ozone and aggression. On the central platform, under the harsh white light of 1,000 floating orbs, she stood supreme. For 7 cycles she had remained undefeated, a whirlwind of precise violence from a culture that bred warriors like others, bred artists. Her skin was the color of polished amethyst, her frame elegant but corded with lean muscle. The crowd, a melding of species from across the Accord, roared her chosen title, a word that translated roughly to unbroken blade. Her challenger lay at her feet, groaning softly, a hulking brute from a heavy gravity world now nursing a dislocated arm. She did not gloat. She simply waited, her silver eyes scanning the sea of faces in the tiered seats, looking for the next fool who would test her. He emerged from the shadowed ingress, not with a swagger, but with a quiet, almost weary step. He was human, a fact that drew a murmur of bored interest. Humans were not uncommon in the proving halls, known for their tenacity, but lacking the natural weapons or telepathic gifts of so many others. They were mid-tier brawlers at best. This one looked particularly unimpressive, dressed in simple gray fatigues, his dark hair cropped short. His face was calm, unreadable. He climbed the steps to the platform, the noise of the crowd dying down to a curious hum. The unbroken blade watched him, a slight tilt to her head. "You wish to add your pain to my collection," she stated, her voice like chimes made of ice. It was not a question. "I wish to fight," he replied, his voice low and steady. "You have seen my work," she said, gesturing to the defeated foe being helped away. "You understand the terms. Yield or be broken. There is no shame in walking back down those steps." "I understand," the human said, and began to unzip his fatigue jacket. It was a practical move, allowing freedom of movement. But as he shrugged the heavy material off his shoulders, the crowd gasped. The unbroken blade's breath caught in her throat. His torso was a landscape of scars, a testament to wounds that should have been fatal. But it was not the scars that silenced the whole. It was the tattoo. It dominated his entire back, from the nape of his neck to the base of his spine, rendered in stark, indelible black ink. It was a depiction of a creature of nightmare, a being of impossible anatomy and rage, a thing of teeth and claws and world-ending fury. It was rendered with such horrific detail that it seemed to writhe upon his skin in the pulsating light. But it was not just an image of a monster. It was a portrait of a monster being choked. A human arm, muscles corded with strain, was wrapped around the beast's throat from behind. The monster's eyes were wide, not with fury, but with the panic of suffocation. The human figure in the tattoo was featureless, a study in pure, relentless finality. Every species in the Accord knew that image. It was not art. It was a historical record. It was the logo of the Human Voluntary Expeditionary Forces, the VEF. More specifically, it was the insignia of the veterans of the Hell's Reach Abyss campaign. The Hell's Reach Abyss was not a war. It was an extermination. A devouring swarm from beyond the galactic rim had poured into echoed space, a mindless biophage that consumed all life. Armies fell. Worlds were silenced. In desperation, the Accord opened the Forbidden's vaults, offering any weapon, any technology, to any species that could stop the tide. The humans took the offer. They took the unstable jump drives, the psychic dampening armor, the singularity grenades. They did not form grand fleets. They went in small, desperate groups, boarding the living bioships, not to destroy them from the outside, but to kill them from within. They fought in the dark, airless guts of those nightmares, where the atmosphere was acid and the walls tried to digest them. The only way to kill a hive queen was to get close, enough to physically rupture its core ganglia. The stories that came back were not stories of heroism. They were stories of survival of a kind so extreme it redefined the word. The veterans who returned were different. They had fought an enemy that had no concept of surrender, in conditions that broke physics and minds. And they had won. The price was etched into their very souls, and onto their skin. The unbroken blade felt a cold that had nothing to do with the temperature seep into her bones. She was a duelist, a master of the controlled, ceremonial combat of the proving hall. Her victories were ballets of calculated damage. The thing depicted on this human's back was not about victory. It was about ending a threat. It was about wrapping your arm around the devil's neck and not letting go until the light left its eyes, even if it meant your own bones were ground to dust. The human turned to face her, his own eyes now visible. They were the color of a sky after a storm, and held a depth of quiet that was more terrifying than any glare. He saw her frozen stance, the way her eyes were locked on his back. He gave the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. "You recognize it," he said, not as a boast, but as a simple, grim fact. She could not speak. Her culture valued courage above all. To back down from a challenge was the ultimate disgrace. But her people also valued wisdom. They had a saying, "Only a fool fights a landslide." The wise step aside. This man was not a fighter. He was a force of nature. His combat would not be a contest of skill. It would be a transaction where the currency was suffering, and he had already proven he could spend more than anyone in the galaxy. "I?" The word was a crack in her icy demeanor. "Your people? You are Hell's Reach." "I am," he acknowledged. He did not move to attack. He simply stood, waiting for her decision. The crowd was utterly silent. They all understood now. They were not about to witness a fight. They were about to witness a choice. The unbroken blade looked from the tattoo to the man's calm face. She saw no anger there, no desire for glory, only a profound, weary readiness. He had come here for a reason, perhaps a personal one, a need to test himself against something that could be understood after fighting things that could not. She was not that thing. She was a warrior. He was something else entirely. Her honor screamed at her to fight, to at least try. But a deeper, more primal instinct, one that recognized a predator from a higher link in the chain, held her fast. To fight him would be to step into a world of pain from which there was no elegant exit, only a final, brutal conclusion. Slowly, with a stiffness that spoke of a monumental internal struggle, she lowered her hands from their combat stance. She straightened her posture, the aggression bleeding from her form like water. The gesture was unmistakable. "I yield," she said. The words did not echo. They were absorbed by the stunned silence of the hall. A judge drone floated down, its lights blinking in confusion. "Challenger, you have not engaged. State your forfeit." "I yield," she repeated, her voice stronger now, laced with a new and unfamiliar respect. "I will not cross blades with a Hell's Reach veteran. My victory would be empty. My defeat would be absolute." She turned her gaze back to the human. "My people owe yours a debt that can never be repaid. We lost a world to the swarm. Your people took it back. I will not spill the blood of a savior, even in ritual combat." The human listened. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed his face, not triumph, but a faint, sad acknowledgement. He gave another small nod. "Wisdom," he said, "is also a form of strength." He bent, picked up his gray jacket, and slid it on, covering the horrific, glorious testament on his back. The monster and its slayer were hidden once more behind plain, unassuming cloth. He turned and walked back down the steps the way he had come. The crowd parted for him, not with cheers, but with a hushed, awed reverence. They had come to see a fight. They had witnessed instead a lesson in scale. The unbroken blade remained on the platform. The champion who had just forfeited without a blow being struck. Yet she did not feel defeated. She felt as if she had just stepped back from the edge of a cliff she had not seen in the dark. She had challenged a man to a fight, and one look at the story written on his skin had shown her she was not in his world. His war was not her war. His peace was not her peace. That she watched the shadowed ingress where he had disappeared, knowing she had just met true fear and true strength, and they had worn the same tired human face. The proving hall felt suddenly very small, a stage for children's games. The real battles, she understood, were fought in the dark with no one watching, and the only prize was the right to see another day. She left the platform and never returned.